When I started this video, I made it with one question in mind, and that question was, how does perfectionism affect my life? I have tried to make this video probably like 30 times. 31st time's the charm.
And one of the things I've noticed over the years is that people can have extraordinary achievements. They can do really, really well. They can be building up their lives and doing and achieving more and more, and yet sometimes they don't feel it. They don't feel like those things are achievements. They don't feel like those things are good enough. And one of the patterns and one of the traits that seems to be coming out of it is that those people tend to be perfectionists.
Yo, is this guy in my head? So, the very basic definition of perfectionism is the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection. Now, for a lot of people, this could mean something completely different. For one person, it might mean that literally everything they do has to be perfect up to their what they deem as their perfect standard. And for people like me, it means that you never get anything done. Let me explain. So, for example, that beginning part with all the extra fonts, I decided to include that into the video because in making the video, I went through like 30 different fonts before I had decided on one. That's the one that you saw at the end. But I said, okay, a video about perfectionism. I couldn't decide because none of the fonts were perfect. So let me just include that in. And I thought that was like a fun little piece. But I legit went through like 30 to 40 fonts before I decided on one. Like, I mean, come on.
Perfectionists can become depressed, and why sometimes when we're depressed we can become perfectionists, and how this can actually really hurt us, and try and find a few ways through it.
So outfit change because it's 2 days later, as you do. So for me, perfectionism, depression, and procrastination go hand in hand. They all feed off each other. They all kind of merge into one blob of... And to kind of illustrate my point a little bit further, the time between this clip and the last clip, you probably saw a little cut in there, is about 3 days because I got really sad and nothing was really looking the way that I wanted it to in the edit. So I was like, I'm just gonna take a 1 day break, and then that 1 day turned into 2 days. And that 2 days turned into 3 days. And now here I am, and it's 3 days later.
The idea that there's a risk that when we try to be perfect, when we are perfectionists, that it could lead to depression and anxiety if we're not careful.
You know, here I am, different day. I should have thrown in anxiety into that clip earlier. Perfectionism, procrastination, depression, anxiety, all kind of blend in together. For me, a lot of times my perfectionism looks like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. So quick interjection by editing Jonathan here. I'm editing the video you're currently watching, and I just wanted to show another example of quick perfectionism. So this clip that I just included in my video was off by the littlest amount. And that wasn't okay. It takes a whole bunch of different forms, really. So my perfectionism really came out in working on this project. I would start a clip, find something wrong with it, delete the whole clip, start a new clip, find a little thing wrong with it, tweak it a little bit, wait 2 days, find something wrong with it, delete the whole clip. And it's so frustrating. I think ultimately, if I'm able to actually put this out into the world, I'll be so proud of the final product, but it's just like constant nitpicking that is just so so agonizing. And it could be the littlest things, like a color isn't quite the way that I want it to be, or there's a shot that isn't framed exactly right. And I think in a creative space, this can be good to an extent. I think there's a point where it can become a little bit too much, and that's definitely where we're at. Okay, editing Jonathan here. So I literally deleted the whole project and I'm starting over. Whoa!
You know, perfectionism is something that we see pretty often from people. But what's interesting about it is it can manifest in a broad variety of people.
Oh, of people.
Yeah.
Ah.
From people who are like business people, people who are sort of in the healthcare field, people who aren't business people but just
Parents.
you know, parents, kids,
Young children,
yeah,
middle schoolers, teenagers. Well, not so much teenagers, but yes, across the lifespan,
right,
and across occupations and
yeah.
Right.
So, first is grace and acknowledgement. I would say acknowledgement and then grace. Acknowledgement of the behavior. So, say you were working on a project that was supposed to take 5 minutes and you find yourself working on it for a half an hour. The acknowledgement piece would be stopping, acknowledging the behavior. Oh, I'm trying to fix this too much. I'm working on this too much. I'm nitpicking this too much. And recognizing that and then giving yourself grace. So instead of, oh, I could have done this, I should have done this would have saved me more time. Man, what? Oh, and the anxiety and the depression hole. Give yourself grace. Show yourself some compassion and really just reflect. And it'll get you out of that cycle. So it's like, oh, I can acknowledge that this happened. I don't have to ruminate on it any longer. It happens, let's move on. And that is showing yourself some grace, showing yourself some compassion. So a big one for me was saying no and prioritization. So oftentimes I will accept like 3 or 4 projects or extra work shifts or meetings or dinners or hangouts with friends, and I get very overwhelmed. And I think a lot of the time perfectionists want to say yes to every opportunity that presents itself, but really refocusing and learning how to say no, because that can be really hard, and prioritizing the projects that you want to work on and prioritizing that self-care, again, is really important. So one of the biggest things that I'm still working on when it comes to perfectionism is giving myself a reason to move on. And so when I say that, I mean doing the very best that you can do, giving yourself a time limit. A lot of the times I want to keep doing things until they're perfect, so I'll do something and then do it again and then do it again, and it's like an hour later, 2 hours later, 2 days later, 3 days later. But doing something and giving yourself like a 30-minute, an hour, a 20-minute, a 2-hour time limit, and then not going past that time. And it would save you a lot of energy and a lot of time. And I gotta figure out how to do that. In the spirit of that, I'm going to use this take and not make any more. So quick before I wrap up, I just read a little bit of an article that basically just says that young people are more perfectionist than ever before, which I just thought was really interesting. You know, what was it before in the 1970s, 80s, 90s that led people to be less perfectionistic than now? What is it about Gen Z and millennials that is pushing, what is it about today's society that's pushing people to be more and more perfectionistic? It's chilly in here, so I have a blanket. Today is November 1st, 2020. And I said that I was going to be finished with this video October 31st, 2019. That was a year ago yesterday. And I'm finally finished with this video. So here are some of my favorite quotes about perfectionism. Some of my other favorite quotes are, "Perfectionism may look good in his shiny shoes, but he's a bit of an asshole and no one invites him to their pool parties. If you wait for things to be perfect, you walk away with nothing. Just jump in and get started. In order to go on living, one must try to escape the death involved in perfectionism." Now this video is getting so long, and obviously I've made this outro like 100 different times. So I'm gonna take my own advice, and I'm gonna move on. I really hope that you liked this video. I worked very hard on it, and the original point of the video was just to see if I could complete a project about something that I was passionate about, and kind of just an introspective on how perfectionism affected my life, and it became a year long of screw-ups and nitpicks and restarts and deletions, and yeah, the last piece of advice that I could give you is just be kind to yourself. You know, not everything's gonna be perfect, and it doesn't have to be. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that it's probably not going to be, and that is perfectly okay. So until next time, bye.